Look at the size of these blueberries.
Yeah,
Wait,
Higher up. Oh,
Monsters.
it's bigger than your
Absolute
thumb.
beast.
yeah, we get done in the UK. Huh?
Yeah.
The blueberries over here are ridiculous.
Welcome to this kind of impromptu off-the-cuff chat with Will. Will, thanks for agreeing to talk to us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, rest day today. What does a rest day look like in Finland?
I think so far most of them have been quite different. Today we went into the actual sort of town city we're staying, and it's got it's one of the oldest towns in Finland, I think. So we went around all the sort of historical bits, which was cool. And then we just drove to a bunch of different islands that are super nearby that are on the Baltic Sea and just kind of I don't know, went sightseeing.
Yeah.
It was fun. I stood on a frozen river, which was fun.
Oh, nice.
Felt a little bit sketchy, but
I saw on Instagram that you split a tip yesterday. Is that right? How's the skin recovering?
yeah, so the skin feels like the skin and the web are the two big issues. But basically, I split open my index on the third session I had, and then I'd taken 2 rest days before that session, and then took 2 rest days after that session, and then on the fourth session I split the finger again super fast, and also split my ring finger on the left hand as well. So that was kind of frustrating after quite a lot of rest. And then taking a rest day again yesterday, and hopefully tomorrow will be okay to climb. But basically, it's just there's the first hold and the last hold that you jump off for the left hand both have one spike that bites into either finger,
right?
And is really sharp. Other than that, it's okay. But these 2 points just keep getting basically cut open.
The sequence and the beta for the boulder seems so. For anyone who doesn't know, and I'm sure everyone does know, we're talking about Burden of Dreams here. But the sequence is so detailed and so kind of precise that it seems like that spike is going to be hitting the exact same point every single time, to the millimeter almost.
Yeah, exactly. For the first move, there is another way you can hold the first hold, but it feels super uncomfortable for me. And because I've not used it much or used it at all, really, it's doesn't feel as strong. And then the hold that you do the last move, which is what split the index initially, you have to get it in exactly the right way, and you can do the move with tape, but it's way harder. And basically, because it's like a side pull, all your weight just goes down onto the index. So it's always going to be exactly the same point if you basically want to do the move.
It's pushing that finger down into it. Sounds
exactly.
To give context for people who don't know, I'm just going to run through some of the things that have happened for you in the last 12 months. Correct me if I'm wrong at any point, but I've done my research, so I think I'm right. First, you got your first Font 8B plus flash, as well as your second and your third. In both of those cases, you were the first person to flash 8B plus twice within 12-month period, and then 3 times within a 12-month period. So that's I've done the research.
I'll take your word for that. I'm not.
Take my word for that one.
But
you climbed Scotland's hardest route. You became the second person to establish an 8C plus boulder in the UK with Honey Badger, and you became just the 8th person to climb Font 9A, which is quite an incredible 12 months. And yet I listened to an interview that you did about Alphane, and you kind of seemed to think that you didn't really have much of a chance of it before kind of going out. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, definitely. And just on the sort of everything before, a lot of that is dependent on whether stuff, the grades of those things, which
okay.
Not 100% confident. For Alphane, so I was out the year before it was done in the autumn time. I went for a trip. It was my first time climbing, I think, in Switzerland outside, and I was there with Dave Graham and Sean Rabitou, and Yeah, the weather was just appalling. It was really
Right.
hot and it was just raining tons. So where Alphane is, 'cause it's a massive steep boulder, basically the bottom part of it always stays dry. And Dave Graham had established the 8A to the right of it in 2005, I think. And so he knew of these other projects. He had brushed them and cleaned them originally back then, but it always kind of just been written off as too hard. But this kind of basically, because everything else was wet, it forced us to
Right.
look at
Okay.
these, and Dave and Sean were getting really psyched because Dave's always thought they were amazing, and then Sean actually checking them out was he got really psyched. And then for me, I don't know, I'd done a couple 8Cs at this point, but only a few. I hadn't done an 8C plus. I hadn't really even tried any, I don't think. And yeah, I was looking at these boulders that I was like in my head, I was like, yeah, these are like 9A, 9A plus futuristic concepts. The conditions were really bad and I couldn't do any moves, I couldn't touch them at all. And they
Yeah.
were like psyched out their minds. I was just sat like a lot of the time thinking like this is just silly, like like this is so far beyond. So I kind of wrote off that I'd ever climb those boulders, and I didn't even know if they would be possible at that time. But then, yeah, Sean kept going, went back a few times, and missioned away till he worked out all the beta for the left one, and then eventually sent it in. Was it April? I
I think
guess
it was,
the
yeah,
next
April.
year. And yeah, Gay proposed 9A grade for it, and yeah, I knew he'd sent it because Aiden was out there trying it a lot with him at the same time. Um, but he didn't really post about it till later in the year. But I was like, oh, that's amazing, that's crazy. And he was doing moves when I was there, but I was just like, that's amazing for him. But it's something that's completely removed from me. I didn't think I'd ever go and do that boulder. And then yeah, he posted his like YouTube video where he shows
Yeah.
the send footage. And I watched it and I got so psyched watching it. And I was like, I don't know why, but I was like, it just looked so good. And I got so psyched watching it. I was like, I need to go and try it properly. And
Yeah.
and now that the sequence is there, I know it's possible. Just actually go see if I have a chance with a lot of training. So yeah, spoke to Aiden a bit because he was obviously going back and had been on
Mhm.
it he'd had a month already, I guess, on it in April, I think. Something like that. And he'd set a replica at his home wall. So yeah, I went, played around on that one session and tried to set a couple of my own, which were all completely silly. And then yeah, I've expected to go basically for that first trip just to work the boulder, but and get more of an idea. I really didn't expect to actually send it. So yeah, it was quite like a surprising
Yeah, yeah.
trip and experience, I think.
It feels like obviously the last 12 months was really the year that you turned and focused on outside climbing a bit more kind of um, deliberately or a bit more with a bit more kind of intention. Having had such a successful year, does it get any easier to start kind of backing yourself and saying, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be able to kind of perform at that high level? Or do you feel like if that reservation that you had when you were thinking about Alphane and you thought, oh, I'll never do that, is that still there, or does it get easier now that you've kind of joined that very limited group of people who have climbed Font 9A?
Um, I mean, I think it's for sure still there. It completely depends on what it is that I'm like, what climb and what I'm looking
Right,
at. Like, there's still a lot of climbs that I think are probably, if they're like super endurance based, long routes, I'm like, it doesn't
right.
have to be that hard. I think I'll be absolutely
Like the
sandbagged on them.
160-meter routes or whatever. What
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Seb Buante, which has linked the whole Flatanger Cave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I think most of the climbs that are established in the sort of stuff that I'm psyched to go and try. I'm pretty confident that with training I'll be able to do. But I don't. There's a lot of things like coming out for Bird and even training on the replica a lot beforehand. I was
Mhm.
coming on this trip just to understand the boulder and see
Yeah.
actually how hard it was. Again, I was gonna be over the moon psyched if I was able to do every move, which I
Happened in
got
about
again
20 minutes.
completely shocked myself. Yeah, because on the first session I managed to do that, which yeah I really wasn't expecting. So I still definitely I think have that, but it's just I'm fairly confident that like if it's something I'm motivated by and I go and I train properly, I'll hopefully have a good chance. But yeah, I definitely don't think I could do everything.
Yeah. I feel like there's that psychological shift where it's like you've climbed with people who are like at the top of the game, and then obviously you're kind of, I suppose you gradually realize that you're all kind of performing on a relatively similar level. And it must be a really weird experience to kind of realize that you're there alongside them. But I wanted to ask about that. So obviously you're climbing with Toru. Is Toru still out with you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of doing well, projecting burden as well. And you've obviously climbed alongside Aidan, and you climbed a bit with Sean as well this year. Are there any observations that you've made about people who are climbing at the kind of top level of bouldering? Are there any similar traits that you see amongst them all?
Yeah, I mean, lots and lots of observations, to be fair. Like that's what's super cool, just climbing with other people. I think, especially if you're in like a sort of similar, as you say, level, is you can learn so much. Like there's a good couple people now, I think, that I've like there's been like one factor of their climbing that I've just looked at and just been like, just my eyes have been open to like how far the level can be above where I thought it was, not even where I am. Um, which is super cool. For instance, Sean's ability to like make tension between his like legs in ways that I never really considered is really, really cool. So like I remember watching him on Alphane originally when we were thinking the line would go right, which I think there is a right version, which I know Aiden's been trying a lot. But watching him use this completely awful toe and foot and somehow get enough clamp to be able to move his arms, and I just couldn't even begin to try the move, really. It was so hard. So whereas like yeah, for instance, this is another point that like I remember watching a couple of years ago Jakob Schubert in Innsbruck training, and he did this like crimp problem in front of me, and I was like, oh, that looks fun, I feel okay at crimps. Couldn't even like pull off the floor on any of the positions, never mind do the moves. It's just like I was completely like lost for words. It was crazy. There's kind of like these differences which are really cool to see, but then also like when you try boulders with other people, that I found like with Alphane climb with Aiden and Sean, and then out here with Toru, it's just you can pick up so much off the other person, and I feel like it's really useful. I think it's cool.
I was going to ask actually, because Toru, he's probably one of the people who's had the most time on the actual boulder. Is that the case? He's made quite a few trips to the burden boulder. Is that not the case? You may know more.
Nalle had 80 sessions.
Oh, I wasn't including Nalle.
Yeah. So he had 80 sessions, which is the most. But Sean was here for 7 weeks.
Oh, was he?
So I imagine he will have had more because Toru.
Yeah.
This is his 4th trip, but they've all been quite short, and he's had a lot of bad weather. I think he's actually only had 15 sessions.
Right. Okay.
So I could actually see Sean maybe having more. It's hard to know though, because Sean doesn't always like say how many he's had, and also he was here going into December and stuff, so the weather was probably quite against him too. And I'm not sure, Aiden was here for 2 months.
Oh, so they were really extended trips when there's
I think basically because the weather's
a lot longer.
Yeah, because the weather's so bad, I think it's people just go for the longer trips to try and have more opportunity. But then it's really hard to know actually who's been the most on it. So
yeah.
He's but yeah, this is his 4th trip, and it's been 4 years, because he couldn't come during COVID with all the restrictions, so he had like quite a gap in the middle. But I mean, watching him on it, the couple of sessions I've seen, he looks really strong. So I think hopefully he'll be able to send it soon.
It's exciting to have kind of both of you out there at the same time, where it's not often that on a boulder like that you'll have 2 people who you feel like as an outsider there's the potential for both of them to do it. And that's really exciting as a viewer, as it were. I wanted to ask about Toru specifically. Like, is there anything specific that you've noticed when he's climbing it? Have you been working it together? And if so, kind of, it seems like such a strangely straightforward boulder, but also there's so much kind of micro beta that I'd be interested to hear if you've picked anything up from him.
I've really been trying because the moves that I struggle the most are the ones that I think he finds the easiest, and then the ones that I find the best are like the ones that he struggled on. So, for instance, the last move he's been really struggling, but I think he's been jumping to like the worst part of the hold.
Right. Okay.
And I was telling him like go to this bit, and then last session he like finally worked out the way like the move to go to that bit, and he was like, oh, I get it now. Whereas like for me, the bit that I'm struggling the most on, I like can't keep this foot, and it's not like I can't keep the tension, but I don't feel like I'm losing the tension. I just feel like there is none. Like as soon as I commit to the move, the foot just comes off the wall.
It doesn't even exist.
I don't feel like I'm fighting it off the wall. It just comes straight off. And I've watched his goes on that move. I've tried to see every bit of detail, exactly where he's standing, what he's doing, and I haven't really been able to work it out. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure with that. I mean, I definitely worked the foot out a bit more last time, but I think I'm standing in a different place, so I'm not sure.
It felt like on the replica there was one crux, and on the real boulder there's perhaps surprisingly an entirely different crux. What is the crux on the real boulder? Because watching you on the replica, it seemed like it was the first move and the last move.
Yeah, so on the replica, the middle three moves weren't so bad. Like the second move and the fourth move were quite okay. Did those on the first session, did the third move in the second session. And I could do this sort of middle link pretty consistently by the later sessions. And then the first move was absolutely desperate. I think that's on the replica. The first move is the hardest individual move I've done. I think it could be like a one move 8B plus 8C boulder. And then the last move on the replica was really hard too, but because the hold you go to is quite good, but it's like an open three finger drag, and you basically it's all about like the friction of the skin that goes on this ridge. And because of the holds, the type of plastic they were in, not having much friction, it basically, if you swung at all on the hold, if your weight like came out from the like being directly under it, you would just slip straight off it.
Right. Okay.
So I had to train to learn to do the move quite kind of slow and in control so that I didn't swing. Whereas on the real one, that hold has a lot of friction on the granite. So you can, as long as you hit the hold in the right place, you can take a massive swing. Like I can hold it with the one arm, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
So that move's a lot easier. Then the fourth move again is pretty similar to the replica. Third move's fairly similar. First move is easier, but instead of being like 8B plus 8C, I think it's like 8A plus 8B.
Still pretty tough.
The second move is the one that's completely I just can't really, I haven't been able to work out well. I've done it once or twice, but it's really hard. On the replica, basically, the foot's just way better.
Okay.
So you can just hold the foot really easily, whereas on this one, you can do the movement, but then the foot pings too early and you just like swing out. So the crux on the replica was the first move for sure. And then on this, I think it's the second move.
Okay.
I think if you do the second move well, and you have like the holds good and everything, then you'll have the really good shot going to the top. Whereas even if you stick the second move, but you stick it like not perfectly, then you'll probably have no chance.
So that's the one where it's like it has to be perfect.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. It's we've jumped a bit ahead to kind of replica chat, but I feel like now we're here. We've got to like dive into it. So one thing I've been interested to kind of hear about is now that you've been on the real boulder, are there any changes that you would make kind of coming back to the Lattice headquarters and kind of being on the replica again, if you either wanted to kind of make it as accurate as possible, or if you don't kind of climb it this time and you want to use the replica as a training tool, what changes would you make?
So there's not much. I mean, it would be cool to have it on a wall that you could change the angle, give it like a couple extra degrees. Because on the Lattice one's 40 degrees, whereas the real one changes from about 41 to 45 on the steepest holds. But the only two changes that would be I would probably be set on would be the starting right foot has to be so much worse because that's the one that I'm really struggling when you do the footwalk. And for the last move, I'd make the foot a lot worse. Actually, I don't know if I would for the last move
Mm.
because the last move in the replica is just so much harder than the real one anyway.
Right. Okay.
The foot on the
Because of
real
the
one
friction.
is yeah, the foot on
Yeah.
the real one's tiny in comparison to the replica, but maybe you want it a bit easier so that you can actually do the move.
Right. 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 Or
But
change
the
the
rest of
friction of the
it,
last hold.
yeah, exactly. The rest of it seems pretty good. I mean, I think the fact that the first move was so hard on the replica, it's really been useful for coming out and trying on the real one being able to do the first move fairly well, I think is pretty useful.
You anticipate it being so difficult that on the real one, it's kind of almost feels a little
It's a
bit
bit,
easier.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's really cool.
What about the pulley? Where did that idea come from? Because as soon as I saw that, I was thinking, can they put 70 kilograms on that pulley so I can try the moves?
I mean, yeah, for sure. The Yeah, I don't know. I always was keen to try it with climbing. The main, so obviously in all other things like fingerboarding, you do it with assistance and just gradually train down. It makes complete sense. And
Mm.
then the big one that it's used in is speed climbing. So a lot of national
Oh,
teams
yeah.
use a pulley system on the speed wall because it means that you can get the muscle memory and
Yeah.
learn to climb the route at the correct speed, and then you just slowly drop the weight and you're already used to climbing it and training it like
Mm.
in that speed.
That makes a lot of
And
sense.
whereas it's a lot harder to like continuously increase your speed on your own body weight because you've learned it for that way and it's hard to like break the cycle. So I knew that it was done in climbing as well. And I always thought it would be really cool to try a boulder because it's like getting a power spot, but you could just have it so you can just have it so you can always just work with the weight and train really effectively, I guess.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
know exactly that you're doing the right weight. Um, so yeah, and then just at Lattice chatting with people like Leo there, we were just got super psyched. We're like, well, why don't we just try it and see? It might not work, but because Burden's like a board climb as well, that's the thing. I think a lot of boulders or climbs it wouldn't work, but because and we just set up for the first move, it actually worked really well. And yeah, I think having the pulley like sort of central so that the weight goes into the wall rather than up the wall, I think was
Right.
really useful too, because it felt like this isn't going to make any sense, but it felt like I was taking weight off rather than like taking gravity away, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense,
Taking
but
weight off rather than
basically,
taking gravity up. Like it wasn't
yeah,
pulling
because
you up, it was that you were having to generate less force.
basically
Yeah.
because you're getting pulled into the wall rather than straight up,
Okay.
it when you're getting pulled straight up and you do like a big move, like I feel like there's more assistance and it feels a bit wrong because you get pulled up off the holds in the feet,
Yeah.
whereas being pulled in, it felt like I was still doing all the like movement work to the hold myself, but
Okay.
I was
Okay.
just a little
Okay.
bit lighter.
Yeah, that does make
I know
sense.
like I'm not really sure how to word it, but
No, I think
I
that's
think if you
yeah.
do try pulley systems, I think that's the best way.
Cool. I'll check if Lattice are willing to let me try it with however
I,
many
I'm
kilograms off.
I'm sure they will be.
When you think about kind of replicas and your experiences on them, you've used a kind of a version of replicas for Alphane and then quite a kind of high tech one for Burden. It seems as though they're likely kind of here to stay in terms of replicating top end bouldering for a number of reasons. Can you think of any limitations of replicas and where they might kind of fall short, or are there any like boulders that you've done where you just think a replica could never capture that, or do you think that they're pretty much applicable to all styles of boulders?
I think you can train pretty well for most things, but they're for sure like without having like being able to go to a commercial wall and search all over for the right spacer wall for like a perfect erex that's at the right angle or something.
Mm,
If it's basically any sort of basic style of move that you're struggling on, I think the replica is perfect and a really good way to train. There are definitely a lot of climbs, so it doesn't really work, or doesn't work as well, I guess. I'm trying to think of good examples, but it's hard.
No, I think weirdly, I think an arret is a good.
Replicas have been around for ages. There was a replica of Mecca that grew up at this center.
Yeah. No, I mean, like obviously Malk Smith had the famous Hubble replica as well.
Yeah.
I wonder if that still exists, if that board still exists. That would be amazing. I'd love to try that. I mean, it didn't really look anything like the boulder because it was just a flat board rather than like stepped roofs.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It was just like basically grab undercuts above your heads and just keep pulling into them.
Right. Just imagine there's a roof in between.
Sprinter. Yeah.
So you've spoken a little bit about that first move on the replica and how it's probably the hardest individual move that you've ever done. Was it 10 sessions that it took to get that first move? When you think about climbing outside, is there any single move that's taken you as long whilst still actually being able to do it, if that makes sense?
No, I don't think so. So there's moves that I've tried for like a lot more sessions but never done.
Right.
Like I've got one at the tour, which annoyingly I found a knee bar that means you don't need to do the move. Really, really gutted about that. But I probably had like 20 sessions on this move, and it feels kind of close, but it's felt kind of close for like 10 sessions, and I've not got any closer. But I think most things outside, I've done most of my current projects fairly fast. Alphane took 10 days in total, I think. And like of like more one move things. So I know like at Ravenstar as well, there's 2 one move 8A plus boulders. And both of those are like the level is clearly like way below the replica, that first move. So it doesn't feel like it could be a one move 8B. It feels like it has to be harder. It feels like more than just one step up. I'm trying to think in terms of routes. There's been Brandenburg maybe took 6 or 7 sessions to do one of the moves.
Right.
But that was like, it's very much trying to find the right beta, whereas when you've just got 2 holds, 2 feet, there's one thing to do and you're spending every session on that. And then I think also the pulley system probably took 2 or 3 sessions off. I reckon it made like that much of a difference potentially. So I think, I don't think there's any move that's come quite as close yet.
Let's chat a little bit about the live stream and where that idea came from, because I have to thank you for one of the highlights of my recent fun trip. So I was out in Fun, and it was the last day of my trip, and I went out to this 7A that I had absolutely no hope of climbing, and spoiler, I didn't climb it. But while I was kind of standing beneath it and kind of thinking, can I really be bothered? My fingers are a little bit tired. Then I saw a little notification that you had gone live, and I was like, I wonder what that's about. Clicked on it and saw that you were on Burden, and I was like, this is perfect. I'm just gonna set my pads up, and then I kind of basically just watched you trying something that was at the top end incredibly difficult, whilst also flailing about on this boulder that for me was incredibly difficult, albeit something that's objectively quite a lot easier. So where did the idea for the live streams come from, and kind of how did it all come about?
It's been an idea, I guess. It's been floated around a lot, and from a few people, like Elle originally, I think, and then I had quite a few when I was posting about the training sessions on the replica. I had people messaging saying, "Oh, if you did a live stream, I'd love to just like watch. It'd be super interesting to see what the session looks like." And I was never overly keen about doing them, but originally anyway. And then there was so much talk about the flash attempt. Yeah. Everyone's saying, "Oh, if you're on a replica with 3D printed holds, like, does it still count as a flash attempt?"
Yeah.
And that's like a whole other rabbit hole we could go down. But basically, like, I always thought it was a bit of a like kind of conversation that didn't have to happen because no one was going to flash burden. At least so I think anyway. Currently, so I thought coming out here, I was like, you know what, it would be fun to just show a live stream of my flash attempt just because there's been so many people debating whether it would count or not. And I was like, I know I'm going to fall off the first move. So, it'd just be quite a funny thing to do.
Yeah, like it's almost like a tongue-in-cheek sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah, a bit in a way. And then, I don't know, did the flash go and then was like, well, people are watching it. I was like, might as well show the rest of the session, keep going. And but people seem to really like it. So it was a lot of fun answering the questions, and it didn't feel like it actually intruded on the session at all or anything. So I decided to do 2 more of them on the second and the third session, which was really fun. And
do you
think
think they're here to stay, or do you think that that's kind of just those ones so far?
I think I'd be keen to do more, and I think it is something which is cool and could become a bigger part in climbing. But there are a lot of factors that have to come together, so it has to be. I think it has to be more in the sort of boulder style where you can actually chat a bit more and answer questions maybe, and it has to be, if you're doing it at a crag, it obviously has to be somewhere that's got good phone service. It's also then has to be somewhere that's probably quiet, or you have to plan to be there maybe but on a solo session, because I know for sure if you're at a busy crag there'd be a lot of background noise, and a lot of people, if you're trying the same boulder, say, probably wouldn't be happy being live streamed, for instance. So I think there's a lot of things that will make it not work on many things, but for things like Burden, where it is quite an interesting boulder, I guess, to see. And I think it's a cool concept that hopefully will happen more.
It seems to work really well. People are definitely interested. I mean, obviously, for me, it worked. I was like, 100% watching this.
Awesome.
And also on the UKC work chat, everyone was like, "Will's on Burden, Will's on Burden." UKC basically shut down for about 45 minutes on that first one.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I think I had some messages from the Lattice crew saying a similar sort of thing.
Yeah,
I think most of the kind of was maybe not ideal, but
climbing community just dropped tools and just started watching, which was great. I feel like you kind of just answered this, but if you're being kind of 100% brutally honest with yourself, what percentage chance did you think there was of flashing it? Was it 0%? Or was it 0?
I'm not going to say 0, because there's always a chance for sure. But it'd be 1%. I mean, I was expecting to come on this trip, as I was saying a bit earlier, project just the individual moves for the whole trip. In my eyes, even if I could send the replica consistently, the whole thing, which I think I'm a long way from, I still think it would be, you'd be coming out thinking maybe I've got a 10% chance. Because the boulder, even if you're strong enough to do it, I think, is so low percentage. Every hold you can hit slightly wrong and it doesn't work. And there's so many feet that you can just pop off. So I really was. I was not expecting to flash it at all. Feeling the holds initially and being they've actually got a bit more friction than the replica. I was like, I was thinking, maybe I could do a bit better than I was expecting, but I didn't expect to do it.
It's kind of it's strange that there has actually been a surprising amount, because of maybe Sean's video as well, where he kind of, in his tongue-in-cheek way, said how annoyed he was that he didn't flash it. There's been quite a lot of chat about flashing Burden of Dreams, which is absolutely ridiculous, obviously, but it's interesting just even to kind of talk about the possibility of it on a kind of, I don't know, a biomechanical level of is it physically possible? Obviously, if you can do all the moves, then it is. But it seems like it's quite a long way away from people doing it.
I'd be willing to say I'm probably 97% sure that we won't see a flash of Burden. But I don't want to say because for sure the level can change, and I think there's a lot of people out there that are really strong, but I would be, just because it's so low percentage as well, I think I'd be really surprised. I do think, though, that it won't be long and we'll hopefully start seeing some 8C flashes. I don't think that's a million miles off.
Are there any that you've kind of got your eyes on for the 8C flash?
A couple. There's some I probably should have saved when I was younger.
Right. Okay.
Or like 2 years ago or something, I guess. But yeah, there's a couple in America that I'm pretty psyched for. Other than that, there's not too many that I know of really that I'm like thinking I'll go for. But there's one or two that I'm psyched for.
All right. Okay. Cool. I'll let you keep your cards close to your chest there.
I mean, it's not super secret, but I just haven't actually been to the areas yet.
Yeah.
I've never climbed outside in America, so I don't know if it's just completely ridiculous and I need to actually go and see the boulder, like the areas, and see if the grades are really hard or not.
Yeah. But then you had that experience in, was it Germany, where it was the first pull on German rock was an 8B plus flash.
Yeah.
So you never know. You never know.
I mean, I do think that one is more in the 8B. But yeah, that also suited me quite well. Yeah. And it's what's interesting with the flashing is it's very different when I was getting ready to go for that in comparison to Burden, where I don't know, I feel like feeling so confident and you're like, yeah, like you can like kind of pretend to do the moves from the floor and like envision actually like going through the flash. Whereas even with Burden, after having the 10 sessions on the replica, it felt like completely ridiculous.
Whole kind of different level, isn't it? Talk to us a little bit about the new beta, because for those of us who have been watching the live streams, it's been really interesting to see you kind of working out the new beta and seeing whether it would work. I'm wondering whether you've kind of settled on a particular beta or whether those kind of experiments are still happening, or do you know what you're going to do each time you kind of pull on, or is it kind of once that first move stuck, you kind of make the decision on the fly?
Yeah, so for sure I know what I'll do every time I pull on, because you have to have very certain shoes for the other beta. The other beta, for people that haven't watched, is a heel hook. You do the first move as normal, and then you put a heel next to your left hand, and that lets you match the second hold, and then goes like skip the third hold, goes straight to the fourth. Mm-hmm. Then you hold like some non-hold, which lets you release the heel. You then get the third in the wrong order, and you can jump straight from there. So essentially, you skip out the really hard second move, the footwalk, and the really hard third move. And instead you do like a easy second, easy third, easy fourth, then like a tensiony release, and then the fifth move's not so bad, and then you do like sixth move's not so bad, and then the seventh move. So it adds 2 moves, but the majority are all easier. But the heel hook is absolutely awful. It only works in very certain shoes, like the 510 Naiad. Because you need the really low cut edge. Okay. And also because it's such a small and aggressive edge, it will basically wear through any pair of shoes very, very quickly. So it feels like initially, because my foot wasn't working on the original beta very well, I was thinking it's maybe actually a higher percentage way, but I think if you can get the original betas, like learn it better, like I feel like I'm a bit more confident now that it'll be just a better way of doing it. Even if you're doing harder moves, it will feel more consistent. Whereas the heel, I think it could just slip every go for 200 goes. Right. Okay. So I think if it works, it's the best way, and for sure is probably a little bit easier.
Do you feel like it would change the grade at all, or do you feel like it's similar? It's not really that much of a kind of gain, as it were?
I really don't know. Like from an initial thought, the fact that the other beta took me essentially 11 sessions, if you're counting the 10 replica sessions, and then the first session on the boulder to like do all the moves and stuff. The first time I tried this beta, I did all the moves. Right. So it does feel like it should be a lot easier. Or not a lot easier, but easier. Yeah. But it's hard to know because it's I haven't like linked the section at all, because it's I can do the first couple moves and then the heel pop, or I can pull on there and do the like end section. But to try and do it all together, I think could actually just be really, really hard to actually hold the heel. I feel like it could change the grade. But then whereas like every other sort of beta that you look at, where you're like, oh, I wonder about doing like this crazy thing. You're like, yeah, that's just so much harder. Like, that's not going to help. Whereas this actually does seem like it could be better. Not saying it is because I don't know.
It could be a case where a boulder gets downgraded to its original grade because it also receives an upgrade at the same time.
Yeah, the original way.
Yeah, the original way could be 9A plus.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I don't want to comment too much on the grade without having actually done the climb.
Of course. That's understandable.
Because I feel like it's it's very much just speculation in that sense. But I'm fairly confident in saying it is up there as one, if not, it's either the hardest boulder I've tried or like joint hardest.
Okay.
The other one that I'd say is on the same level is in the Czech Republic. Adam Ondra sent Terra Nova.
Yeah.
Which is like he gave 8C plus, I think in 2011 maybe. It's like a traverse.
Yeah.
Which isn't the most inspiring of this limestone, but it's like ridiculously hard. I didn't have too many sessions on it, but I got completely shut down.
It's so good to know that there's always something that's just ridiculously hard out there waiting to be tried, but also that it's a traverse as well.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But and I spoke to Adam after when I sent after Alphane. And because I was saying that, I was like, I still think Terra Nova was harder, and he was just laughing. He was like, no, it's not. Don't worry. But I couldn't do like half the moves on it. It was ridiculous.
Maybe it's one of those ones where when you've been to that crag as many times as Adam has, and that you kind of been there day in day out for years, it's a little bit easier or something like that. Who knows?
Possibly,
or maybe it's 9B. Who knows? I want to ask about your kind of film that's being released in maybe, is it a week's time, 5 days time? Free at Last. It's not often that such a pivotal year in someone's career is captured on film. What's it been like to watch it back for you?
Oh yeah, it's been really cool watching it back. When I got the sort of first edit of it, I was just smiling the whole way through it. It's quite often I find it hard to like watch myself back sometimes.
Right.
But like I really enjoyed watching it back. It's, as you say, like for me it felt like quite a big year, a lot of change and stuff. So actually having it captured, being able to sort of see the start and then work through was really cool. And like the footage, because I hadn't seen, having done Free at Last, I hadn't actually seen the footage that we filmed up until I got like the first draft for it. So watching that back was amazing. I was so psyched.
A few questions about the future. So correct me if I'm wrong, but is this trip part of a larger trip? It was my understanding that you might be going out to is it Arco and trying Excalibur, and then maybe going to the US as well?
The original plan was to go to Arco and try Excalibur. That was what I was actually training for. And then I was like, and then we'll spend a couple days after that trip. I was going to go there for like 10, 12 days. And then last couple days that I had still left in Europe, I was like, I'll go over to Finland and just look at Burden of Dreams and check it out. But then the weather was super bad in Arco to the point that like I think there was disruption for flooding maybe. And I like debated what to do, and I was like, because I remember when I went last time, I went for 10 days in December, and it rained a lot on the second day, and the top of the route never got dry. So I was thinking I don't want to go and just end up not having a chance of sending it even. Yeah. So I actually just cancelled that trip, and then was like, when the weather gets better, I'll rebook in like a week or 2 weeks time, because I got refunds and everything, and I was like, then I'll go back out. But then having done that, I was like, well, what do I do training wise? I was like, I'll just keep going on the Burden replica. And then just got more and more psyched on that. And then just ended up thinking, actually, I feel really good. I should just go to Finland. So I, kind of postponed the Arco trip a bit more indefinitely at the moment. And it's like, when the weather gets good, I spent every day just refreshing the weather page.
Yeah.
And essentially the first day of the season, it would be possible to get to the boulder and it'd be dry. I came out for. And then, hoping to go to America and actually climb outside. because I've been once before. I went in 2019, I think, for a training trip, which was pretty short. But yeah, I've never climbed outside, so really, really keen to do that. But thinking of doing that in, I think, May time, so bit of a break before.
So we have bad weather in Italy to thank for your burden trip.
Yeah, pretty much.
How long are you out in Finland for? Is there like a kind of limit on your trip, or is it kind of open-ended?
Yeah, so originally I'd worked out all the EU days, so that we'd go to Arco and then we'd come to Finland, and I would have 2 days left over at the end of the Finnish trip, so that I could be like safe with the visa stuff in case flights got cancelled. And then I'd have to go back to the UK and I'd start getting days back around, I think this is 7th of April. So I was like, oh, I come out for a quick trip, check the boulder out. And then if I need to go back, train for a bit, and then come back out when it's hopefully still cold. But with not going to Arco and coming out later to Finland, we literally have just worked out tonight that actually it is possible for me to extend the trip and the days perfectly align, that as I run out, the next day is the first day I get back.
Oh, okay.
So I do actually have the potential of staying longer, which I do feel close enough to the boulder that I might do if needed.
Oh, right. Okay. So in theory, is 60 days that you start, you get another renewed 60 days?
90 days in 180 days.
Oh, right. Okay.
But it's a rolling 180. So I think I'm getting back the Swiss trip from where I did Alphane, which was that was a really long trip. So I definitely wouldn't be able to stay the whole time. That was like 5 weeks. But it means I'm going to have days that I could be in Europe technically until I think May, like the end of April.
You spoke a little bit earlier about a right exit to Alphane that Aidan has spent some time on. And the way that these really, really difficult projects seem to develop, at least from what I've seen, is that they kind of always have an association to another problem. So it's like Alphane has the right exit, and then people talk about the Lapnor project and the Sisu project, is it? Which is the other one that Nalle kind of put some time on, where he could hold positions, but he couldn't actually kind of generate between the moves and stuff like that. Are there any kind of hard climbs that you're particularly excited about trying out moves on, or kind of putting some time in on?
In the project world, there's not. I've been really searching for like either a short route or a boulder, like long boulder in Scotland. Like I spent some time last year, and there's a couple projects, but there's nothing I found that I'm like super psyched for at the moment.
Okay.
I have like a couple local projects. I had one that I had nicknamed Burden of Nightmares at Ravenstor, because it was like going to be 9A boulder, and I think it wasn't great. But in the fashion of Burden of Nightmares, I broke the crux hold in two, and it's basically completely screwed now, which is a shame.
Like fully impossible now.
Yeah, well, not impossible, just more in that 9B territory, which for me I think is a bit impossible.
Yeah. It's a step up.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of things in Switzerland that are amazing, but currently there's not something that I've got my mind super set on. I've not found exactly what I'm too keen for. I don't know. There's a lot I want to basically go check out still, but I haven't found a project that I've been trying or anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, you're putting a lot of effort in on Burden, so it makes sense.
Yeah. For now, like the two things I think project-wise I'm most psyched on, which are established, are Burden and Excalibur.
Yeah.
I'm really like motivated for these.
Second ascents of either of those would be pretty big news. We hear a lot of people talking about how the kind of experience that they have on a boulder is really important to them, or that's what gives it value. Or some people kind of search for these king lines, or it has to be an isolated boulder. But then we see you working on and getting incredibly passionate about boulders that a lot of the time seem kind of almost a little bit weird, like the kind of, Burden of Nightmare-esque boulders, where it's kind of, it doesn't necessarily fit into either of those camps in an obvious way. So the question is, what is it that gets you really excited about a boulder?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things, and in general, like ideally, I'd love it to be a king line that really stands out with incredible moves and everything, and really good rock. But that stuff I think is really hard to find. And I think for me, big thing, like I'm really motivated by pushing myself, so difficulty is like really important, which is why I quite enjoy going to like Ravenstor and trying these silly projects, which potentially finish, 2 meters up a 12-meter wall, which you could do as a sport route if you wanted. And they're not like going to the Czech Republic. A lot of the limestone bouldering there, like in the south around Bruno, is again, it's like Ravenstor. You do these crazy hard boulders for the start that just finish basically where the sport routes begin. But the moves and everything are really hard and really cool and different and interesting, and I just get psyched by it. I'm not really sure why.
Just the difficulty of it, I guess. Like,
yeah, there's a big difference between looking at something like Hazel Grace in the Gotthard Pass in Switzerland, which is just absolutely incredible, or something at like Boardwalk Cave in the in the peak. But I just get really psyched by hard moves, I think. So
it's also a nice kind of way to look at it, in that if that's your criteria for what excites you about a boulder, then you're never gonna kind of run out of stuff to do. Whereas if a boulder has to be this kind of beautiful line or an isolated kind of block in a really picturesque setting, you're gonna run out of fun stuff to do pretty quickly.
Yeah. And that's the thing, if you can find those ones, they're for sure going to be the best every time, but they are hard to find, I think, especially in the style maybe that you want to look for. I think the thing that gets me like the most psyched in climbing is like continuous hard moves. So it's why I think I spent a lot of time sort of doing longer boulders or short sport routes where you just don't have a rest. You just like go non-stop. So I think also trying to find stuff like that is a lot more common at the bottom of like walls where you do maybe little traverse sort of boulders or stuff.
That's what Honey Badger looked like from the outside in, where it's just kind of bam, 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 hard moved up.
Yeah, Honey Badger is like one of the better examples where you have like it's like actually a really good line. You just come from the back of this big, huge cave and go all the way through to the top, and it's just continuous the whole way. Yeah, that was absolutely amazing. I mean, obviously, super happy to send that, but in a way, I was kind of like thinking, if it had been like a longer project, it would have been cool too. I was really, really psyched by that one. And again, similar with Free at Last, the route in Dumbarton, because the start of the route's not so hard, but then the crux is, I think I reckon grade wise was like a long 8C boulder, but like 12 moves, where it's just like when you get to the crux, like the hard section, it's just non-stop. You just have to keep going for it. I love that. Whereas there is one more sport project at Dumbarton, which is bolted, which it's so almost perfect, but I'm not that psyched for it because it's like you do an 8B plus sport route, which is an existing line, and then from like this undercut jug that you clip the chain, you do 2-move like 8C plus boulder, and it's like it's just so low percentage and brutally hard that I'm not so psyched to work.
You've got to do so much to get there, and then there's a horrible low percentage move at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, thank you for talking to us today, Will. Appreciate you taking your time out to do so, and good luck on Burden.
Well, thanks a lot for having me again, and thank you.